Alright, so would you lose weight if your employee would offer you cash for it? What about if they wanted to know if you're going to have kids or even your daily walking patterns? Today I'm going to be talking about health and wellness programs offered by employers, which are essentially programs designed to encourage the employees to act healthfully and save health spending for both parties. And hopefully you'll believe the things I say, because I have been keeping track of this current issue for a couple months, and of course for this project I've done extensive research. And you should probably care about this because I'm assuming most, if not all of us, hope to be employed or employing people in the future. And according to Wall Street Journal, 3/4 of employers as of 2014 offered such health programs. So today the purpose of my speech is to explain the importance of and controversies surrounding corporate wellness programs. And to that effect, I'll be speaking to what's being monitored, what's offered for that, and then controversies including just the voluntary nature of these projects, whether they're even efficient, and whether your privacy is safe, or whether your information is privately kept or not. So without further ado, let's move on to the methods and incentives offered. So what do companies want to know? Very often this is biometric screenings. Sometimes they'll bring in doctors and give you health risk assessments. Sometimes they'll just want you to be checking up often and giving information to them about that. Disney and Whole Foods measures variables such as weight to height, healthy blood pressures. And increasingly these days, a lot of companies are turning to tech. So Wall Street Journal's Mr. Chen says that Vitality works with more than 30,000 grocery stores through an app to analyze participants' food choices and award points for healthy purchases. Seems kind of invasive to me, but they also have Wi-Fi connected scales, and of course you guys know what Fitbit is. They keep track of your weight loss over time trends, as well as steps walked. And so what do they offer for just valuable information, right?
You might have not picture.
So I'm going to show you two graphs right now. The first one is this is the first one. Basically showing you what kind of things they offer. You can see here that most firms tend to reward discounts to insurance premiums, or reduced payment for coverage, even straight cash rewards. And a few firms might give you gift cards and time off. And moving right on to the next slide, you can see that the average amount people save a year is $784. So you can see it's not trivial. It's actually a pretty large amount, and it's only bound to be increasing. It seems at least to be the trend. So now that we know essentially what's being offered for what the quid pro quo, I guess, would be, we can talk about current controversies. And the first would be whether or not these programs are even voluntary. By law, the ADA, Americans with Disability Act, says that employers cannot force us to give them health information. It's very private. And if we do offer it, it must be voluntary, otherwise it's very illegal. And up till recently, it was 30% of your premiums would be considered non-coercive. There have been lots of suits recently, just because it's hard for some of us to say, okay, well, I'm going to leave $800 on the table because I don't need it. Not really, right? We feel kind of coerced in some sense to get that information over. And so, District Court Judge of DC in January 1st of this year actually struck that down. And the NPR's Miss Appleby reports that Judge Bates stated that this can't be voluntary when money is worth several months' worth of food for the average family, 2 months of child care in most states, and roughly 2 months' rent. So I guess it boils down to, do companies have the right to tell us how to live our lives, what kind of health habits we have? And so I think that's just something we should consider when you're hired and we're told, oh, they have a health program, we don't. And moving on right on to whether these are actually effective or not. So very recently, I think 2 years ago, the National Bureau of Economic Research, in a comprehensive and randomized, well-designed study, failed to find any significant change in medical spending from participants over a year. And on the other side of that, a recent health affairs study about a year ago said that well-designed workplace programs averaged high rate ROI, with medical costs tending to fall by $3 for every dollar spent. And I think the way you can reconcile this kind of information, first is that some of these programs might take a while to have an effect. So maybe over a 2-year period is profitable for everybody, over 1 year it's not. And on the other hand, I think a key word from that quotation was that it's a well-designed workplace program. So programs that do encourage you over time, give you timely rewards, monitor the right things, and the thing effective. And so I think we should consider that when we're getting hired. Are these plans something that are not even effective at all, and only certain people get to save money or not? or is it something that's actually useful for both me and the employer? And the final concern that exists right now is privacy. And I think you might have felt that at the very beginning when I asked you. It's a little more personal, like for family planning. Some firms even keep track of your drug consumption, and if you're cutting down on some things like smoking, they'll reward you. So just that, as well as like some things like apps, like and Fitbit, that keep track of your sleeping habits, that keep track of how much you're walking every day, and basically where. That kind of information isn't something that we would want to be mishandled, and it's unfortunate, but a lot of companies are not covered by HIPAA, which is an act that makes companies follow rigorous rules for the way they handle our private information, the way they report it, the way people can access it. And so it's just some of these employers aren't even covered. According to Wall Street Journal's Chen, the former chief privacy officer of the Department of Health and Human Services stated that there are just too many different nuances about when data is covered and when it's not, and it makes it impossible for individuals to figure out whether their information is protected. So not only that, but some companies, hopefully ones that we don't get hired by, they aggregate our data and actually sell it for profit. So make sure that you consider that when you're getting hired. So now that we've essentially learned how these work and understand the current debates surrounding them, I'm just going to wrap things up for you guys. Today we learned what kind of data is collected, what kind of incentives are offered for that. And we learned that there are certain problems regarding the voluntary or coercive nature of these plans, whether they're even effective, and whether our privacy is being secured. And so hopefully you guys learned something today. I feel like with all these presentations, I try to do something that's current, relevant to your lives. So in the future, when you're talking to your employers or you're at a workplace and a current event comes up, you have something to talk about. So thank you for your time. And that concludes my presentation.
So Derek, some thoughts?
Good overall speech. The main kind of idea is the importance and controversy of wellness programs, right? Is that kind of, am I on that? Okay. You had good sources. That was pretty good. You quoted them very well. I like how at the end you kind of said, the reason I have these presentations on current events are because I'm trying to help educate you guys, and if you have at any point in time that you want to talk about it with a coworker. I thought that was a pretty good point. Your visual aids were a little rough. The first one, there's a lot of information on it. You kind of explained some of it, but then it's still like left up to reading. And the second one was just too bright to really even look at. It was kind of a hard one to take in. About halfway, you went importance, then controversy, and then you went to, do they have the right to do that? And I feel like had you talked about that in your central point, that would have been pretty good to like for us to know, because then it would have been like, oh, okay, he's talking about if they have the right to do these kind of things and have our information. But an overall reaction was that it was a fairly good speech with just a few minor details on it.
All right. I'll echo some of the things that Derek just said. I thought you did a very good job offering the supporting material and using your sources in the presentation. Most of the time there were pretty good explanations about some of the issues that you talked about. At one point I thought, okay, I've got it set. There are 3 supporting points, and then it sounded like there were 4, and then later on it sounded like there were 5. So it's a little bit confusing, despite the fact that it seems to progress in a pretty logical way. I think there's just maybe some subdivision of the organization that gets overdone on 1 or 2 of the points, and that makes it sound like there's more there than there actually was. The setup was pretty solid at the beginning of the speech. Like I said, the research was good in the presentation. I think he mentioned one of the things that I had a reservation about the visuals, that there's a lot of information on that first one that doesn't get explained, and you kind of act as if we're gonna be able to see all that information instantaneously and know what the differences are. And, you know, I'm barely able to look at and see what the percentages are before the other things just disappear and they aren't really there anymore. I go, okay, well, there's 39%, 23%, 7%, what the hell is that one? You know, and it's like, boom, it's gone, so you've moved on to something else at that point. So I think sometimes you need to think about what's the purpose of the visual, what am I trying to explain here, and did I get that through with what I showed? And I think that was missing, at least on that one. Presentation, I think you do a very nice job speaking to the audience for the most part. I do think you have a tendency, as you're going on, to get quieter during the presentation. And I think your energy level needs to stay up a little bit. We're not overemphasizing delivery things on this particular go-around, but that'll be something to be thinking about in the future. But your audience contact and the other elements of the presentation are very solid. Thank you.